What do the majestic pyramids of Egypt, a lush biosphere reserve in the global south, and a local journalist reporting from a conflict zone all have in common? Well, at first glance, absolutely nothing, right? But there's actually a single global thread connecting them all. Welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're going to solve this compelling mystery together.
We're taking a deep dive into demystifying one of the most ambitious, complex, and honestly misunderstood institutions on the planet, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. You probably know them as UNESCO. But beyond those famous plaques you see at tourist sites, what does this organization actually do behind the scenes?
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Born from the ashes. 2. Protecting our shared history. 3. Science and global education. 4. Defending the truth. And 5. The battles ahead. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Born from the ashes. To truly grasp what UNESCO is all about, you have to understand the absolute nightmare it was trying to wake the world up from. The path from unimaginable destruction to a global commitment to human rights was remarkably fast. In 1939, the Second World War broke out, unleashing just unprecedented slaughter and the systematic destruction of art and knowledge. By late 1945, at a conference in London, leaders came to this stark realization. Armies of scientists and unchecked technology could literally destroy humanity unless they were constrained by a universal moral framework. This urgent consensus led to the creation of UNESCO in 1946, culminating really closely with the drafting of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
And this whole realization led to a beautiful core philosophy taken straight from their founding preamble. They knew that treaties alone just cannot prevent war. I mean, a piece of paper isn't going to stop an invading army. Lasting peace requires education and mutual understanding. The founders believed that if wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed.
Section 2. Protecting our shared history. This is arguably UNESCO's most recognized quest, preserving human culture around the globe. And the scale of this mission is just awe-inspiring. Look at this number, 1,121. That is the staggering number of inscribed World Heritage Sites protected across 167 countries. We're talking about everything from the massive biodiversity of the Great Barrier Reef to the ancient stonework of Machu Picchu. These are properties deemed to have outstanding universal value to all of humanity. Places so vital that losing them would be a tragedy for our entire species. But here's the catch. It's not all ancient ruins and stone architecture. UNESCO is actually in a relentless race against time to save what's called intangible heritage. These are living, breathing human traditions that don't exist in stone, but in practice. Think of the mesmerizing art of Neapolitan pizza twirling in Italy, or the incredibly rare whistle language used across the ravines of the Canary Islands. Through instruments like the 2003 Convention, they are working desperately to protect these oral traditions, rituals, and traditional craftsmanship from being entirely erased by modern globalization. And this mission is vital, primarily because it was a direct response to the horrific looting and cultural erasure we saw in World War II. The 1954 Hague Convention recognized that destroying a people's culture is a devastating psychological weapon of war. By obligating states to protect cultural property, even during armed conflict, UNESCO basically planted a flag declaring that human heritage is universally off-limits on the battlefield. Section 3. Science and global education. Moving beyond history, let's look at their forward-looking mandate to empower humanity to not just remember the past, but to survive the future. Take the Man in the Biosphere program, launched way back in 1970. It isn't just about putting a fence around a forest to save the trees. It actually pioneered the entire concept of the Biosphere Reserve, teaching us how to survive and thrive alongside nature rather than constantly extracting from it. It mandates ecological conservation for sure, but it equally supports sustainable economic development for the humans actually living in those regions, turning local communities into the primary guardians of their own ecosystems. Beyond the environment, they also act as the global watchdog for education. They lead the monitoring for the UN's Sustainable Development Goal 4, pushing for universal quality education. And they don't just issue reports, They actively analyze massive data sets, tracking metrics like graduation rates, gender equality in rural classrooms, and the severe global teacher shortage.
Their underlying goal is to make absolutely sure that no developing nation is left behind in this incredibly competitive 21st century knowledge economy.
Section 4. Defending the truth. Now we arrive at a really surprising yet critical pillar of their work that you might not expect from a cultural heritage organization: defending freedom of expression. Did you know UNESCO actually established World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd? Protecting a local journalist isn't just a political issue for them. It is the absolute frontline defense of truth. In an era literally drowning in disinformation, independent journalists are the vital immune system of an informed, peaceful society. UNESCO actively monitors exactly where press freedom exists and where it's under violent threat.
So, how do they do it? They build a structured defense against the suppression of information through 3 clear steps. First, promoting independent media channels to ensure diverse voices are heard. Second, actively tracking modern censorship tactics, like state-sponsored internet shutdowns during critical elections. And third, relentlessly fighting the impunity that so often follows violence against journalists. They actually run on-the-ground training programs to teach reporters how to operate safely and securely in highly hostile environments.
Section 5. The battles ahead. Despite all these noble quests spanning from ancient temples to modern press freedoms, UNESCO faces immense modern villains that threaten its very survival. The organization operates under intense political strain, where ideological divides frequently cripple global cooperation. For example, the 2011 vote to accept Palestine as a member state triggered immediate funding pullouts and hostile reactions from the US and Israel, which severely impacted the organization's resources and stalled critical initiatives. On an entirely different front, militant groups like ISIS have used the deliberate, televised destruction of ancient heritage sites in Iraq and Syria as psychological warfare that strikes directly at UNESCO's foundational mandate to protect human history. And that brings us to their absolute greatest vulnerability: funding. Despite having massive operational needs to manage thousands of sites and global education programs, UNESCO relies heavily on unpredictable, voluntary donations from just a handful of member states. When political disputes arise internationally, those voluntary funds can vanish overnight. This leaves urgent global preservation efforts incredibly vulnerable to sudden, complete halts. Furthermore, the battlefield has fundamentally moved online. UNESCO now has to navigate a highly complex web of digital warfare. They're up against the rise of sophisticated PR guerrilla tactics, widespread algorithm-driven disinformation campaigns, deep state surveillance, and an intense ideological war over who controls global cyber data. Protecting human rights, cultural identities, and access to truth today means fighting deep in the digital trenches. So, we've seen how UNESCO connects the pyramids, a biosphere, and a journalist, all under one massive umbrella of human progress. But with rising political tensions and digital threats, the architecture of global cooperation is shaking. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder about the fragile future of our global identity. In a world increasingly divided by screens and borders, who will step up to protect our shared human heritage tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.